I'm very excited to bring up Nissan's Yetunde Faparusi, who is Director of Brand Marketing and Performance Strategy, and Keri, who's Director of DEI from Nissan. And they have some really interesting insights to share with you. It's been a year, besides the pandemic. There's just been a lot happening in the world, and Nissan has been on top of responding to it in a really authentic way, which is what they're going to share with you. So welcome, ladies. I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks, Tanya. Good afternoon. I am so glad to be with you today. I think from all the previous speakers, we've definitely established that it's been a very challenging year and a half for marketers. And it hasn't been any different for us at Nissan. But at Nissan, we've embraced that challenge, and we've really used that and leveraged that not only to help transform our brand from a transformation journey perspective, but really also our diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. And a big part of that was a DEI Disruption Day that the marketing team collaborated with the diversity office on this past summer to put together. And Keri and I are extremely excited to share insights from that journey with you today. But before we get into that journey, I think it's very important, and it would be helpful for me to really walk you back to how we got here as a team and as how we collaborated on this. So Nissan, over the past 2 years, has been on a brand transformation journey, on our Nissan Next journey. And that journey really has been focused on 3 pillars. It's about changing the business. We're focusing on changing the product and changing the culture. And from a product perspective, we have been on that journey for a while now, refreshing our entire lineup, 10 products in 20 months. So that journey has been well on the way, and if some of you had the opportunity last night, we had the opportunity to start the reservation process for our Aria, which is the first product in our A to Z lineup. But in terms of changing the business and changing the culture, we really needed to step back and look at things from the point of our consumers. Because for us at Nissan, it's about starting with our consumers. We really want to understand where our consumers stand with us. So as an organization, as we were going through this process, we sat back and we started to evaluate how are consumers communicating with us and connecting with us. And we had a really sobering experience as we started to evaluate where consumers stand with us. We found out that our overall opinion with consumers was beginning to decline over the past couple of years as a brand, because we had focused so much on a volume-driven strategy. And then to top that up, we also found out that consumers had no emotional connection with us. They saw us more as a functional brand, a price-driven brand. And so this was very sobering for us, and we decided as an organization, of course, we needed to do something about it. So what did we do? In January of 2020, so right before the lockdown, it was the last thing we got to do as a big group. We got together, our Chief Marketing Officer, Allison, and our agency team, and the entire marketing team decided to put on what we call a Brand Disruption Day. And this was a disruption day with the sole focus of coming up with a North Star on how we are going to form a deeper emotional connection with our consumers. And a lot of times when you're talking about kind of the brand and turning the brand around, it's usually delegated to just the marketing team, or you're doing it with just the sales and marketing team. But we decided as an organization this needed to be an organization-wide effort. So this was a cross-functional disruption day over 2 days, where, as you can see in this image, we actually had leaders from product planning, we had leaders from manufacturing, we had leaders from R&D, we even had leaders from HR, finance. We had our dealers also represented in this 2-day disruption. And we sat down and really started to evaluate really where we stand, what do consumers expect from us as a brand, and really look at what is it that Nissan brings to the table, what has always made Nissan, Nissan. And as we went through this process, one thing that came to light very quickly for us is, as a brand, Nissan is all about innovating and exciting, right? We're all about innovation and delivering that to people. But that when Nissan is at its best, we don't just excite people. we thrill them. And that's where the idea of thrill was born. And so you've probably seen them in our ads. We started to inject thrill into our messaging. And we did that really by focusing on what makes Nissan really Nissan. Like, what is it that is truly the essence of Nissan? And it comes really from a few things. One is our innovative technology, and you've probably seen those coming through in our commercials. It's about those driving experiences that thrill consumers across our entire lineup. It's about those heroic cars and drivers that we bring to the table. And really, it's about the attitude and swagger that really is evident of Nissan. And last but not the least, we wanted to focus on value, not just price. So we started to do this and started to see results with our brand and with our messaging. But at the same time, we were rolling this out in the middle of 2020. And of course, we all know what was going on in 2020 in the middle of that time. Right at the height of COVID, there was also all the social unrest and injustice going on in the country. And we really had to take a step back as a marketing organization and say, what do we need to do beyond just messaging to our consumers? And we really needed to look at the breadth of our consumers that we message to. So if you weren't aware, we definitely serve a diverse group of customers. And Nissan has over 40% of our sales come from multicultural audiences. That's 40%. So one of the highest in the industry. And it's definitely something we're proud of and we work towards. But we know that it's more than just marketing to these consumers. It's more than just selling the vehicles to these consumers. In the current environment of everything that was going on, these consumers are very particular about the brands that they form those emotional connections with. We needed to deepen that connection with them. And they're very particular that the values that they exhibit show up in the brands that they interact with. So as we sat around as a leadership team and as a marketing team, we said, how do we go above and beyond that? And Allison said, you know what? We had a brand disruption day where we were able to turn things around and start to move our brand around. Why don't we collaborate with the diversity office on talking through a disruption day for DEI, which was a great experience for me because Keri and I have been friends for a while, but we've never had the opportunity to work together on a project. So we galvanized our marketing team as well as our
working with Yetunde. So it truly starts from within. Customers, as Yetunde mentioned, the customer is 40% multicultural. And consumers truly care about the values. And that includes the DEI. So what we knew was that Nissan needed a clear North Star. The North Star that would help guide our DEI engagement across the organization, customer base, and through our partnerships. And it really is critical that we have executive commitment and engagement. You'll see here pictured in the middle, this is Jeremy Paperson, who's the top person within the region. And he has truly helped set the tone that DEI is a critical commitment in our organization. He speaks often about it within town halls. Not only that, he's an active participant within what we call business synergy teams, oftentimes known as employee resource groups. One of my favorite examples was actually this June during Pride Month, and we were running an LGBTQ+ workshop, and Jeremy appears on the Zoom call. No one knew he was coming, and he just showed up. He was an active participant. He was asking questions, he was engaged, and he was clearly an ally. People were IMing me during the call. One of the memorable things was after the call, a friend of mine popped in to my Zoom with tears. They were literally crying because they felt so supported. They felt so valued and so seen that the chairperson was an ally for them. So it's not just a commitment in being in presence or a commitment in voice. It's truly also about action. And our chairperson has taken swift action. In 2020, he created an appointment of an African-American female to our U.S. Board of Directors. And just at November 1st, he named a vice president, the first vice president who is African-American and female, as our chief diversity officer, Chandra Vassar, and she happens to be here with us today. It's my boss. But again, he's taking swift action, and he realizes that this is what's important. And you'll also see on the slide that he also knows that we have a lot of work to do. Even though he's done a lot and we are taking a lot of steps, we just have so much more to do. But that he's committed to doing that and also to be the change that the company needs to see. Oh, one more thing. Also in this picture is Allison Witherspoon, our Chief Marketing Officer, who might also be in the room. And we really partnered together through this. Again, so much thanks for the partnership. But this is also the point. I think as I went to the next slide, it reminded me just how important that integration of DEI throughout the organization is. Because the commitment has to be from everyone. DEI belongs to everyone. It cannot just be the diversity office. It cannot just rest on the shoulders of people of color or women or people in underrepresented groups. It truly has to be driven by everyone and owned by everyone. So with that in mind, for our Disruption Summit, we really broke it into two parts. Again, with the idea that commitment starts top down, it also has to be bottom up and throughout the organization. So what you see pictured here at the top, these are our top leaders in the local region, so within the US region. Of course, due to the pandemic, when we held this, we weren't able to bring people in from across the region. But we brought people who were representative of each function, very similar to what happened during the marketing disruption, so that we could have the voice of everyone represented. We knew that we needed to hear from everyone and have everyone's voice and input to create that North Star collectively. And the pictures at the bottom show how we broke out into different breakout rooms, and we were problem solving, and we were talking about things that we've never talked about in the business place before. And so with that, it takes me to the idea that thoughtful and uncomfortable conversations are critical. It's what we found out during that disruption day. It's really key and critical that we address it head on. And what we learned in that meeting was that, why were we so uncomfortable? Some people were uncomfortable because they didn't necessarily know where to fit. But what we learned was that we still had to push through and that we needed to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So what changed? Because we were able to find that breakthrough. What we found was that when we were uncomfortable, it was because we were talking about, let's just say, diversity by itself, which can be a polarizing topic. You don't know necessarily if you're in the group or not in the group, or how do you feel about it, and we might have different thoughts and opinions about a topic. But when you can actually shift and reframe the conversation to one that's a leadership competency, where leaders have to take on and tackle difficult conversations every day. So it's not just about diversity. It's truly taking on that bold conversation and leading it toward a place of a positive outcome. And so that's what changed. We literally were able to make that switch from DEI competency to leadership competency and conversation. So I would love to be able to tell you what our breakthrough was, but I can only describe the process. And the reason is, as I started, it starts from within. We still have to share this within our organization, and our Chief Diversity Officer actually has a town hall on Friday to further share. But what we did, we actually, again, I mentioned that we had two different workshops. One was an executive workshop, and one actually spanned the organization across levels, again, across functions. It included our business synergy teams, individual contributors, people from manufacturing, because we knew that we needed that voice to be included, and we wanted this vision and this disruption and this output, this guiding North Star, to represent everyone. So the process that we used was to look at the vision. Where do we want to go? What is our DEI ideal? In the perfect world, what does Nissan look like when our DEI is perfect? And then we had to have those hard, thoughtful, bold conversations about ourselves. What are the things that are standing in the place of it? What are those conventions, those road lumps, those bumps in the road, the things that are keeping us from achieving that ideal vision? So we had to talk about them. And then we stepped outside of ourselves and looked at it from a different perspective to understand what actually solves the tension between that roadblock and the vision or the ideal. What are the things that actually create peace and a solution to that? And that is the disruption that we found. Very powerful. So looking ahead, what happened? We brought people together. We realized that this is a journey, and now we have an additional army kind of joining hands, moving forward towards the North Star. We have alignment throughout the organization. The leaders took the information back to their teams. They were able to have further conversations to validate the information to be true. And again, what we learned, this is a journey. It's not a destination, and we need to take this journey together. Yetunde?
Thanks, Keri. So as Keri said, we took all that information back to the different functions, and she mentioned that, hey, what did we do? So as a marketing team, every function came back and we said, what are we going to do specifically from a marketing perspective? And we'd always been all in from the beginning of this. We decided as a marketing team that we needed to go beyond just the transactional. We needed to go beyond just our media buys, our typical media buys, and we wanted to create foundational change. We really wanted to create change across 3 pillars. Specifically, the first one was around our multicultural marketing strategy, which we already have in place, but we wanted to go above and beyond that. We have a multicultural audience, we have 40% of those audiences, but we want to make sure that we're speaking to these audiences and meeting them really where it matters. So we actually had thrill research with these audiences to find out, what does thrill mean to our audiences? And what does it mean to the African American audience? What does it mean to our Hispanic audience? And how do we deliver on thrill to them in a very meaningful way with nuances and insights that matter to them? So based off of that research, we were able to go in and look at media partnerships for our campaigns, at different campaigns that we bring to the table, and make sure that those partnerships are really speaking to these audiences. So a good example of that was a Pathfinder campaign, a recent Pathfinder campaign that we just completed. And that Pathfinder campaign for Pathfinder is all about returning to rugged with Pathfinder. Really, it's all about, and we talked about it a little earlier in the other session, is a lot of vehicles are talking about returning to rugged, about being rugged. But for us, from a Pathfinder perspective, it's not just about returning to rugged, but it's about finding the path, right? So no point intended there. It's about helping people find their paths with their adventures. And so for our multicultural audience, one of the things we did was really look at Black-owned businesses that are adventure-focused. Black-owned businesses such as a bicycle owner or a bicycle business or a surfing business, where these audiences are not typically looked at in these spaces. And we actually created video series that showed the Pathfinder helping these people bring their adventures to life, bring those passions to life, and find the path to those adventures. The second pillar was around partnerships. We really wanted to make sure that we're not only doing the media buys that target this audiences perspective. We wanted to make sure that not only in front of the camera we have a multicultural talent, but also behind the camera. And then the last one is around the marketing and going beyond just the marketing and trying to find innovative ways to really speak to these audiences. And one of the things that we're doing is really trying to make sure that we're not only just spending media dollars with us partners, but we're bringing in additional multicultural partners. So we're having media days, and literally every week we have two multicultural media partners that we have not worked with before, bringing them in and having calls with them to find out what capabilities they bring to the table, as well as what capabilities we can help them with, so we can build those long-term relationships with them and use them just for one campaign, but leverage them to be able to continue to speak to those audiences. So we've just started. We're obviously well on our way, but kind of early in the process. And what we found is we're really making meaningful progress, right? We're strengthening our partnerships not only with our diversity office, but with our stakeholders at large. So Keri mentioned that after that first disruption day with leaders, we actually had one with additional stakeholders across the organization at all levels. And that was led by our marketing and our agency team, Nissan United, to really have those additional conversations and really have those breakthrough conversations with them. We're also collaborating across the organization with our employee resource groups. So we leverage those employee resource groups to really look at our campaigns as we go out to our multicultural audiences, whether that's our Black employee resource group, our multicultural resource group. We're bringing those campaigns to the table to them before we go to market to ensure that we're not only speaking to the specific insights and nuances that matter to those audiences, but that we're also bringing those messages in a way that is meaningful to them. We're beginning to see results, right? We're seeing increases in our key buying actions across our websites through these campaigns. We're seeing partners bringing ideas to the table that we would never have had before. So the biggest thing, and I think the biggest takeaway for us, is that we need to take that first step. And Allison, my boss, is always saying, we have all these actions. We just need to start. Take those first steps and start moving forward, and you'll start to see progress. And that's what we've done from a Nissan perspective. For us, the first step was really that DEI disruption, and it's really engulfed kind of the way everyone is thinking about DEI across the organization. Like Keri said, it's not just a DEI conversation anymore. It's really a leadership conversation at all levels of the organization. So the biggest takeaway is, again, just take that first step and start moving and that change that we're looking to see will come about. So with that, I will pause for any questions.
Hey, let's get started. I think that's amazing what you guys are doing.
Where you're from.
Oh, media post.
But
Thank
nobody
you.
knows that.
I want to. You talk because you're obviously performance. That's your job, big job. So you are seeing. I think that's incredible that you guys are having more than 40% that you are seeing more people of color buying Nissan. How are you seeing any of those from these things that you? I know it's new, but are you seeing any of those kind of results that can kind of go back to that you are now sort of reaching the different audiences and partnerships? Are you seeing an impact in terms of performance as well?
Yes. Thank you, Lisa. Great question. Yeah, we're definitely seeing those results come through. So not only are we reaching the specific audiences that we're going to, so the example I gave around the African American adventure businesses, we're seeing those results flow into brand, what we buy in actions, right? We're seeing that flow through into other models within our portfolio. So we did this on the Pathfinder campaign, but we're seeing those key buying actions even flow through into models that speak to different multicultural audiences, whether it's a Centra that speaks to our Hispanic audiences, or Maxima, other models that are in a brand. Definitely seeing those results coming through as well.
And is that also impacting just total brand in terms of just general market? Because this is a time right now where people are expecting more from brands, and I would imagine that you're also seeing that kind of cross over into every general brand marketing.
Absolutely, yes. And as I said, mentioned at the beginning of this, one of the areas of a business that we were looking at where we saw that sobering experience or result was our overall opinion with consumers, and we are starting to see movement in those metrics within our brand, because that's the overall kind of where our brand stands with our consumers. We're seeing that flow through. We're seeing it flow through in the trust KPI within that really shows that you're forming more connection with your audiences as well. We're also seeing that show through in the brand momentum. So we want to make sure that we're moving the brand, because that's part of the whole process. Bringing through to the marketplace is really about improving our brand equity, and we're seeing that come through as well.
And for you, earlier in the in the presentation, you talked about heroic cars and heroic drivers. Talk to us just about heroics in general, because now with COVID, heroics comes in a whole different layer of what is a hero these days. So if you can just shed some light on that, that would be great. You've
probably seen them even in our brand campaigns. We have the different, we have a brand ambassador, right, Bree, but we're also sure that we're leveraging different through our brand campaigns that tell those stories of what do our vehicles do for consumers, how are those vehicles really delivering through. That's what we're focusing on. Is we have cars, and no doubt about that. We have a great lineup, but in the way we tell those stories, both social and digital, making sure that leveraging influencers and managers across the board that tell stories in very impactful ways to those consumers. And that's also where we're taking those nuances from the research that we've done, is what is it that really brings those nuances to life for those consumers, and making sure that we have people who represent them in those stories.
Microphone is wet because it's clean.
Hi, I'm Nathan from Marketing Evolution. Fantastic presentation. This is more for me for Keri. When you have the positive outcomes from these workshops, how do you, maybe as a recommendation, keep the momentum going? Because a lot of times at companies, you almost like checking the box. Okay, we had that one meeting. How do you guys kind of keep the momentum going?
Absolutely great question. And that is something that I'm asked all the time. And so we really have a process. So like we said, we started with the executive disruption, and then we had a separate meeting with different levels and various levels throughout the organization and region. So that was step 2. The third, we've actually had kind of homework, and people did input to get back to their teams, continue the conversation. We truly drilled into action plans and next steps and how will we measure this. So that's that third step. As I mentioned on Friday, our Chief Diversity Officer will now announce this to the organization and then embed it further and further into the organization through trainings and conversations. And there's just we have a whole plan and a roadmap for it. But you're right, it cannot just be a moment in time, and we are taking advantage of the momentum that we have. Great question.
All right, I think we are good, and I just can't thank you enough for being here. You guys are, you're so authentic. You really do walk the talk, walk the talk. Be the change. It's a cliche, but be the change you want to see, and that's why your chairman is involved, because the change has to start at the top. So, thank you both.
Thank you.